everyone, to the Horned Frog Blitz podcast number 8. Another great day to talk Horned Frog football recruiting around the Big 12. Going to recap the Frogs' 45-21 win over Iowa State last week. Frogs got a bye week this week and got a lot of big action going around the Big 12 that we're going to take a look at. Lots of stuff on our plate for this evening, and joined always, first of all, I'm Jeremy Clark. And I'm joined always by my good pal, Jeremiah Glenn. Jeremiah, how's things going tonight?
Going pretty good as always.
Or this morning when our fine listeners hear this.
Yeah, it will be morning.
Top of the morning to them, guys. Good morning. I hope you guys get a good lift in, and or you're stuck in traffic listening to us. Hopefully we make the ride to work a little bit easier for you guys. But let's dive into some Frog football.
Let's do it.
I got to say, last Saturday night, I was kind of worried. I mean, it was, here we go again, road woes, as you would say. Frogs get a 45-21 win, but it certainly wasn't easy in the beginning. Iowa State looked like they were on pace to score about 60 points that game, didn't they?
They did, and I was surprised at how physical Iowa State was, I think. I was surprised at the offensive line of Iowa State. I feel like I'm saying that a lot in the last couple of weeks. I'm more impressed with these offensive lines than I thought I would be. I don't know if that means the TCU defensive line isn't where it needs to be, or there's just some really talented offensive lines in this conference. I'm not sure. But they came out and played a physical game.
Well, let's talk about defensive line for a second, because I know some posters are kind of attributing that to Dick Bumpus no longer being part of the coaching staff. And I think I can agree with some respect to that opinion, because you don't replace a Dick Bumpus in 1 year. Even as talented as the defensive line was or is, I mean, you're talking about one of the top defensive line coaches in America ever. I mean, you're talking about a guy that sent so many kids to the next level, successful defensive ends, successful defensive tackles. His resume speaks for itself as far as where TCU was in the run game, run defense. TCU's always been known as a pretty tough defense up front, especially when you try to run the football against them. Obviously, this year teams are having great success running the football, but I did want to say that I do agree with some, and I think Dan Sharp's a great coach himself, but you're comparing Dan Sharp to arguably the top defensive line coach to ever coach at TCU, and I'm sorry, those are tough shoes to fill. No matter how great a talent you have at the positions, you're still going to have a little bit of a drop off.
Well, I think anybody that was going to be following in those footsteps was going to have a tough act to follow. I don't care who TCU could have brought in from the outside. Obviously, even with Coach Sharp being somebody that's been with this program for a long time, Bumpus is a legend. People know him. They've known him for a long time. I mean, he has a reputation. He coaches with an edge. His players played with an edge. And I do think that's something that's missed from this year's defensive line, rather. There's not that edge this year. They almost, I don't want to say play timid, but there's not that famous quote with, what is it, how did it go? Put a smile on your face and murder in your heart. And
I don't think
let's go kick those truckers in the teeth or something like that. I can't remember what it was. Something to that effect. But so I don't know, man. That was his mentality. That was his personality, and it rubbed off on his players. And I think there's something to be said for that. I think he is missed, but I also think these are some of the same guys that learned under him for years, and especially the seniors. They should be able to retain those things and take them and teach them to the younger players.
Because I don't think Sharp's teaching a new methodology on the defensive line. They're still running the same scheme on defense. It's not like they've gone to a 3-4 or anything like that. I have seen improvement the last few weeks, especially with Mike being back and with Terrell Latham being back. But I'm not going to pick on the defensive line. I just wanted to kind of talk about that for a second, because I know a lot of people are pointing to that, why TCU's kind of struggling on defense a little bit this year. And I agree in some aspects, but I'm not going to fully put the blame on just the defensive line, as much as I will say it's across the board of why the defense is struggling a little bit. And the biggest struggle right now is they're just not getting prepared. They're not playing in the first quarter. You give up 252 yards of offense against Iowa State. Not Oklahoma State, not Ohio State. I just said Iowa State with Sam B. Richardson, and God love him. I mean, the kid's been playing forever, but that first quarter they were making Sam Richardson look like an all Big 12 quarterback. And
let me ask you your opinion on this.
Okay.
Because I think it's a couple of things. I think it's young guys that can be told all week long that you better buckle up just because they're Iowa State doesn't mean anything. And maybe some of these guys are thinking they've already got it figured out. I don't think it's that as much as I think maybe they're just they really are. This is their first time through the Big 12. A lot of these guys, they're seeing these teams in these stadiums and these atmospheres for the first time, and maybe they're kind of figuring out what it takes to grind on a tough schedule like that. Mm-hmm. Young guys haven't played a physical schedule for this long, and they are undersized guys. Maybe they're starting to feel the effects of it. I don't know, but do you think it's something that it's a mental thing, or it's maybe physically they're wearing down?
I think just watching this game, I don't think it was really a physical thing. I think it was more mental. And I don't really want to call his name out, but Nick Orr was really struggling.
I mean,
they were picking on Nick. They were picking on Nick left and right, and they knew they were in his head because he was making some plays where he didn't get his head turned around fast enough, and even on a play where they called pass interference, Lazard catches it and races 74 yards for a score. I think they're right there, and the thing I've kind of been hoping for and optimistic about this year is, even though they're young and they're replacing a lot of guys on defense, by the latter games of the season when you have to go on the road against Oklahoma and you have to play at home against a high-ranked offense like Baylor, you're tested.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they're getting tested by bigger receivers like Lazard and like Bundridge was. Both of them made some good plays against TCU. And to answer your question, I don't want to keep rambling, but I think it's a little bit of mental. The physicalness, I think, is there. But like you mentioned, some of these guys are a little bit younger. The one thing I will say, I wasn't really impressed with Iowa State's atmosphere.
I was actually surprised. It was not as loud as
it wasn't as rabid and crazy as I thought it would have been in Ames.
Especially with them jumping up early, I thought it would have been nuts.
It was kind of like, I was thinking Iowa State was, the students were obviously there, but it was kind of like, when we were up at Kansas last year when there was a few thousand fans in the stands, and then as Kansas started to get deeper in the game and they're still winning, more fans started. I know obviously there was more Iowa State fans there than Kansas last year, but it kind of had that. They didn't realize what was going on until they finally just woke up and said, "Oh my gosh, we're winning 21-14."
And it was also
better be loud.
Yeah, but it's also to me like when TCU pulled even and then even took the 24-21 lead, it almost looked like their fans were like, "Oh, okay, well that was fun."
Yeah.
Here's reality. And so it kind of took the wind out of their sails. And man, I can't say enough how impressed I was with how TCU's defense played after that first quarter. To go on a 31-0 run after the first quarter, after Iowa State reached 21 points, that was impressive. And you saw safeties making plays, corners making plays, guys making adjustments. You saw the defensive line getting after the guys, and they started playing with a little bit of swagger that I've been asking to see for a while. So I don't know it's almost like you saw Coach Patterson heading to the locker room, and they asked him, and he's like, "We might be the worst first quarter team in America," and I don't think
there's any might to it, Coach. You are the worst first quarter team, at least defensively, because I keep going back to Iowa State, and I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Alan Lazard's going to be a good receiver in this league. Mike Warren's going to be a good running back. They were more physical up front than I expected them to be, and that I feel kind of bad for Paul Rhodes because this, he's probably not going to have a very long leash. I don't know if he'll make it past this season because they've always been the team that's been right there, and every year they're always talking about, well, next year, it'll be next year. But I was impressed with Lazard especially. I would take that kid anytime, any day of the week to be on my team. I thought he played pretty well. But the one thing I was really impressed with, that I wasn't impressed with at first was Denzel Johnson's targeting call. We all saw it, and it looked pretty much like a targeting to me. You could argue that he was going for the ball, but you got to be smarter in that situation. But the silver lining out of that whole thing was Traven Howard was able to just slide back, play the position, and you didn't see him getting beat deep over the middle. You didn't see his name wasn't getting called for the wrong reasons.
Right. He played very well.
And with him sliding to strong safety, you gave us a chance to see Ty Summers a little bit. And Ty, boy, he was getting – Coach P was kind of getting after Ty a little bit on the sideline, but usually when Coach P's yelling at a player, he tends to lock him a little bit. So it was good to see Ty come out there, and good to see that even through that adversity that they have yet another defensive starter go down for whatever reason, that you're still plugging away. You're still plugging away, and we asked Coach P on Wednesday what his thoughts were about Traven moving to that position at such short notice, and he said, well, he practices that position. He plays a nickel for us, but even doing that is still a really hard thing to do, especially for such a young player. So he was impressed. You could see by the smirk that he had that he knows he's got something special in Traven.
Traven's a ball player. I mean, flat out, he's a ball player. He was one of the guys coming into the season that I was the most excited to see, obviously along with Denzel Johnson and Kenny Iloka. But Traven's been exactly what I thought he could be, and I think he's going to continue to get better. Back to the targeting play real quick. I just want to say this on it. I went back and forth on it. I watched it so many different times. I am leaning towards that was definitely a target, because what you see usually when somebody's going for a ball, they usually put their hands out reaching for that ball. His hands were to his side. He looked like a missile going through there. So I'm glad that the kid's okay. That he actually they hit helmet to helmet. It wasn't a severe blow, but it could have been a lot worse. And I'm glad Denzel's okay, because he could have gotten hurt really bad.
I promise you, it obviously didn't hurt Lazard, because he still went on to have a pretty good game.
Right.
But the good news is for Denzel is that was in the first half. He sat out the second half, so he doesn't have to sit for any plays or any set amount of plays against West Virginia. So good news on that front. But for him going out and seeing Traven come in the way he did, I was really impressed with that. But let's talk 1 second, or maybe a minute, maybe 20 minutes, about Boykin. I mean, I keep saying it, man, and I can't get over it. Just 2 years ago, how people were clamoring for him not to be the quarterback, and just look where he is now, and talk about putting your team on your back and just saying, come on, boys, let's get out of here with the big win. He basically is perfect this game. He basically is perfect. 27 of 32, 436, 4 touchdowns.
Ran for 74 yards.
Yeah.
What else can you? I'm running out of things to say about the guy. I mean, he impresses me so much how much he's matured, not just as a player, but as a leader. I mean, there was questions about his leadership ability. He was very immature when he first got. He'll be the first one to tell you he was pretty immature. But man, he's grown up, and the guys look to him and they know that no matter what the situation is, that Trevone Boykin has ice water in his veins. Period.
I'm telling you.
And he just does not care. There's not a situation that's too big for him, and he always has a calm demeanor. I think the offense feeds off of that. I think he's really turned into an amazing leader. Obviously, everybody talking about the picture of him at midfield with the little girl. That was an awesome photo op there. It's very, very cool. But I think you're seeing the maturity of Trey. I think you're seeing a guy that understands. He even tweeted it. It's bigger than the game. He understands that he's been blessed with his abilities, and he's in the middle of an amazing season, an amazing run, and he wants to enjoy it and get everything he can out of it.
You got 6 more games with him as your quarterback. I mean, savor every last one of them.
Yeah, you hate to think about the end of the road, but we're 6 games away from that. So.
I know, remember when people's feelings when Andy Dalton graduated. I mean, it's going to be exactly the same thing. But it's funny because 3 years ago, Trey had deer in the headlight look to him.
Against Iowa State.
He's getting back. He's getting back there. His eyes are as big as softballs. And now the funny thing, when he's at quarterback now, it's usually the defensive coordinator on the opposing team whose eyes are as big as golf balls or softballs right now, trying to figure out how to stop this guy.
I'll never forget the game against Iowa State at TCU when he drops back and throws into triple coverage.
Oh yeah,
and when the camera showed his face, it looked like he didn't see anything. He just dropped back and just chunked the ball across the middle of the field. That was when you look at that and you look at where he is now. I mean, it's just an amazing transformation.
That was a crazy week for him because he only had 2 days to prepare. Yeah. But as crazy as it is, the thing I probably remember that more about that is the frat guy running past Kevin White all day. I'm sorry if you guys are in frats. I apologize, but I mean it did look like a guy that had just pledged into a frat that was beating Kevin White all day on deep passes. But anyhow, but Frogs get away with a 45-21 win. They beat the spread. It's probably not the score people wanted to see, giving up 21 to Iowa State.
Obviously, it wasn't enough because Utah jumped them in one of the
Yeah,
goals.
we'll talk about that here in a little bit because we're going to talk about those rankings and kind of seeing, where we think some teams should be ranked and, kind of talk a little playoff perspective, I guess you will. But yeah, TCU 7-0. That's all that matters. They actually did. It's you're at a point where your program's good if you go on the road and win by 24 and you still
not happy
consider
with
it
right.
not a very good win. But it was, oddly enough, it was the first time they've been held under 50 since the Minnesota game. So
it was also the first road game where they could breathe a little bit, a sigh of relief towards the end of the game, and it didn't feel so pressured. So
yeah,
you got to look at it both ways.
Well, we got West Virginia coming up next. Actually, you got 12 days since this past Saturday, so they got 9 days or 10? My math's terrible right now.
We're 7 days out tomorrow.
Okay, well, it shows how good I'm at math. Anyway, they get a little extra days of rest, and that's great when they got guys like Turpin that got banged up a little bit. Josh got banged up a little bit. You still have guys like Emmanuel Porter that are out, and we asked Coach P about that Wednesday, and he still doesn't know if Emmanuel's going to be back. He had a hyperextended knee, and sometimes those things act a little bit different, so he doesn't know if he's going to be back or not. But I will say the good thing that in Emmanuel's absence and Juwan, I don't think Juwan played a whole bunch, but he played somewhat. But Kobe Listenby, it's one guy we didn't really discuss. Him coming back out
nice
there.
Game. Nice game.
It's a good game for him to return. And good news, he can go vertical. If teams want to double up on Josh, guess what? We got Kobe's on the other side, so he's going to have some good games. I like how physical
Kobe is right now. He's going up and fighting for the ball. His ball skills have improved tremendously, and he's not quite the high point receiver that Josh Doctson.
I don't think anyone is.
He is physical at the point of attack. He goes up and attacks the ball, and he fights for it. And that's what you want to see with your receivers. So I like having him back healthy. I thought he had a great game back.
Well, West Virginia is a pretty good opponent. 3 years in the Big 12, this game has gone down to the wire every time. All 3 meetings have gone down to basically the final possession almost.
And all 3 games have been won by the road team. Just throwing that out there.
Hey, that's very good stat, Jeremiah.
I think that trend changes this year. Obviously, I really do. I just don't think West Virginia has the offense to keep up. There's not a lot of teams that have the offense to keep up, and West Virginia is going to be hurting. In the secondary, Carl Joseph was a huge blow to that team.
Oh gosh, with him not back there, you're talking about a guy that is a good defensive back. He had 5 interceptions before he got hurt. He's the emotional leader. He's the vocal leader of that team. It would be essentially like
taking Kindred.
Yeah, exactly. Losing Derek Kindred on your defense for TCU. That pretty much equals. I mean, maybe even more because still you have Davion Pearson and Mike Tu'ua that are kind of the vocal guys on defense for TCU. But this Carl Joseph was the guy, and that was a very, very huge loss. And we all knew as soon as we saw the news that he was out for the year that was going to be pretty detrimental to their defense. But the thing about this West Virginia team is they're sneaky good. What I mean by that is you can't look past them. The offense has some weapons. Skylar Howard is a local guy, Fort Worth Brewers own. Can move around the pocket a little bit. Not as good a passer as some of the guys TCU has seen this year, but obviously when you have a skill set where you can run and throw, you can do some damage to this defense. And I say that because we've seen it all year. We've seen it with Matt Davis. We've seen it with Patrick Mahomes. We've seen it with Gerard Hurd. I mean, Gerard wasn't as much of an effective passer, but certainly with his legs, he made some plays. But West Virginia took one to the head last week against Baylor. And I'm going to say this right now, and people are going to hate me for saying it, but I've been waiting for Baylor to have a good win. And what I mean by that, I wanted to see them play a team that was a little bit good, good on offense, not atrocious on defense, and Baylor beats them 62-38. This game was over in the first half.
It was 27-17 at halftime.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say first half. I'll say third quarter because Baylor went on a huge run.
Right. I watched that game, and I felt like West Virginia was going to be able to hang with them for a little bit. But, man, you just see what Baylor throws at you offensively, and West Virginia looked bewildered at times. But I also want to point out something that I also saw highlighted on that telecast. There was a play that I think it was a play that tied it up 7-7, or maybe it was when West Virginia's first or second score. I can't remember. Their receiver runs like an 18-yard comeback route, catches the ball, turns around. The Baylor defender is 10 yards off of him. He cuts inside, takes it to the house, and it's never even touched.
Yeah, 70 yards Gibson did.
And I think what that just solidified in my mind, kind of what I always thought, Baylor is not good on defense. I mean, they are not good. They're not any better on defense this year than they were last year. As a matter of fact, I think they're worse. And that's
which is crazy
something.
Considering all the guys they returned.
And I think that exactly. I think that's nuts when you think about the supposed NFL talent they have on that team. And they do have some NFL talent, but it's not showing itself as a unit on their defense.
Someone made a comment today. I think it was Brian Jones about Sean Oakman, how he looks like Tarzan but is playing like Jane. And you got to think he's not too far off of that because you haven't heard Sean Oakman's name mentioned a lot this year at all. Obviously, I think Andrew Billings is a huge talent for them in the middle, but we're getting sidetracked here. We're talking more about – we're looking ahead. We're doing the wrong thing, man. We're looking ahead. We shouldn't be doing that.
I'm trying not to look ahead to that game, guys, but it's basically impossible.
Yeah. Jeremiah's already got his tent outside Amon Carter Stadium ready to get in the press box. But, West Virginia did go on the road and they scored 32 or 38, sorry. So they have a pulse on offense. Like I said, Skylar Howard, Gibson's a good player. Gibson's a guy that is quick dude, can make, like you said, he took that little 18-yard pass right up the sidelines. He's gone 70 yards for a touchdown. But defensively, if you're going to beat TCU at this time, you better score 60.
Yeah.
You better score 60. Or even if you have them on an off day, you better score 50. That's the only way TCU's going to be able to get beat this year is if they give up another crazy number. It's kind of like the Yankees back when the Yankees were good. You know what? You'll score 3 runs. We'll go ahead and score 4. Oh, you want to score 9? We'll score 10.
Right.
That's kind of how TCU's playing right now. You want to score 30? We'll score 40. You want to score 50, 52? We'll score 55.
Yeah. And you see that. And again, not trying to look ahead to the Baylor game, but that's what kind of game you're going to be looking at again. And, hopefully that, TCU can figure out some things along the way defensively that can just get a couple stops. And I really think that I got to stop talking about that game. I think the crowd's going to come in huge in that game.
Well, I think the crowd's going to be big for next Thursday. It's going to be a nationally televised game, blackout. This is the game that I'm so glad is at home.
Yeah. Because
this is a dangerous game on the road. I mean, obviously, it's a dangerous game whether you're at home or on the road, but I think the crowd at Amon Carter is going to be electric. I think
TCU's played very well.
They've played like Jekyll and Hyde from home and away games. Home, they're outstanding. Take away that little third quarter lapse they had against SMU, they're playing pretty amazing football at home. And I think the crowd, like I said, is going to be electric. I think they'll be behind it. They'll get in West Virginia's head on offense. it's going to be a fun game to be at Thursday night. Everyone's going to be watching, so TCU is going to want to go out there and have a good game in front of a national audience and prove that they are one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country, maybe even the top team in the country. I don't know, but there's a lot of parity in college football right now. We're seeing it from coast to coast.
There definitely is, and this break for TCU couldn't have come at a better time. They're able to get rested physically, mentally. These young guys can kind of catch their breath, look at some film, take in what they've accomplished, learn. I bet you there's a lot of teaching going on right now. They're less physical and more mental right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just, really getting these guys focused on what's coming up. I mean, this is the stretch run. This is what you've been working towards. It wasn't always pretty, but you're 7-0, and you've got the meat of your schedule coming up. It's going to be a fun few weeks, and I think these young guys are ready to roll.
You want to talk about looking ahead? Don't look too far ahead because Oklahoma State's 16 right now. They're undefeated. And
that game's looking hard, like more difficult by the week.
Yeah, so. And that's Frogs haven't won in Stillwater. They're 0-2, and they're a convincing 0-2. They, the first year they had a chance in the first half, and that game got away. We saw Matt Brown out there running around for his life, and Trevon did not have a good game up there. His first game in Stillwater. I mean, that probably one of the games you want to forget if you're a TCU fan. If you made that trip to Stillwater. But I think if they do have a good win against West Virginia, it will send a good message to the voters. Obviously, they're not getting impressed with something. I mean, they went up there and beat Iowa State by the spread. They dropped in the coaches poll. They dropped in the AP poll. I don't know what's going on.
You want to know what I think is going on? I think the East Coast media is not staying up and watching the Pac-12 games, and they see Utah wins 34-18. And they didn't see how close that game was. I watched that entire game. And I'm telling you right now, Utah's got a good defense, but Arizona State's nothing to write home about. They're not that great, and they were in that game. They were actually leading that game. Arizona State was leading that game late in the third quarter. Utah had to pour it on late, but, again, I'm not downplaying Utah. I think they're a very good football team. We both have seen firsthand what it's like to try to play in Salt Lake. That's a tough place to play.
Right.
They have a heck of a defense. But Utah doesn't scare me, and the fact that they were able to jump TCU really surprised me. I think you might have a case of maybe some lazy media folks falling asleep on the East Coast.
But what about the coaches, though? I mean, they dropped them too.
Yeah, I mean, Utah's getting a lot of first-place votes somehow. And I'm not seeing that. I think they're a good team, and I think they're a potential playoff team.
Do you think people are giving them a little bit more credit because they beat Michigan early in the year, and then Michigan came to life a little bit, and everyone that saw that game knows that Michigan had that game against Michigan State with 10 seconds left, and if you haven't seen it, for crying out loud, go look it up.
But this has been my point all year long, though. Utah beat what, in my opinion, a good Michigan team, but not a great team. Michigan was about to beat a very overrated Michigan State team, in my opinion, this year. And that's what we've gone by. I've said so many times this year, there is not a great team in college football. And that's why I think Utah gets overrated, because they did beat a Michigan team that's a good 5-2 Michigan team, but I think Michigan's very beatable. Mm-hmm. I don't see a great team, and I think people are overvaluing certain wins on different schedules. So obviously, it's going to take a full season of looking back and saying, okay, this is how it all played out. But in my opinion, I think there's a little bit of overreaction going on right now.
I agree with you. I think TCU shouldn't have dropped at all. It just kind of infuriates me a little bit that you go on the road and you beat a team by 24 points. All people want to look at is the Iowa State, because Iowa State's not having a successful season. But you go up there and you do what you're supposed to do. You win by the spread.
Does TCU have to win 58-10 to
obviously they do, because they have to win by style points, it appears.
But everybody else is held to a different standard, and that's what I think I have a problem with.
The thing with it's not only with TCU, it's with Baylor too.
Yeah.
Baylor has got lumped into that as well. They've got to win by so many style points, and I think it's a slap to the face of the Big 12, because you don't see Ohio State. Ohio State goes up and has 2 wins that they barely beat
Indiana and
Northern Illinois. I mean, where did they fall? They didn't fall anywhere.
Michigan State barely beats a Purdue team.
That's horrific.
Literally, out of 128 teams, they're like number 120 in the country. So I think I don't know what it is about the bias against the Big 12, but I do see that from the media nationwide.
Yeah.
I do feel like the Big 12 is a very good conference this year, and I think that next to the SEC, it's the best conference. And I would like to see a lot of Big 12 teams take on some SEC teams this year. I think they would hold their own. So it is what it is. You can talk about it all day long. It's not going to change the perception.
You just better hope that Oklahoma or Baylor or TCU don't do the three-headed knockout where each one of them have one loss because they beat each other.
But one true champion.
Well, it won't.
I'm confused.
I'm afraid if let's say if Oklahoma beats TCU and Baylor, and they finish with one loss to Texas, and TCU beats Baylor, and they finish with one loss to Oklahoma, and then obviously, that would put Baylor at 2 losses. So I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. Somewhere or another, all 3 of those teams.
It's possible.
Yeah,
you get up with a 3-way tie.
I don't have time to think about it right now. we need Oklahoma to do good, and man, they did good this past weekend because.
And you were right. I couldn't have been more wrong.
You were horribly wrong.
And you know what's funny is you told me the reasons why, and I went back and thought about it, and I felt like an idiot for not even considering those things. Kansas State was coming off of a very emotional loss where they took the number 3 team in the country to the wire. Oklahoma was coming off an embarrassing game to Texas, and it played out just like you said it would. I don't think anybody can.
I don't think anyone would have predicted 55-0.
Right.
That Oklahoma team was completely different from what we saw the week before in Dallas.
That's a scary looking team playing like that.
Last week after the Texas game, I was thinking, maybe it's not going to be so tough going up to Norman.
And then they do that.
Yeah. Then you get to thinking TCU might have to score 70 that game.
But I don't put it past them.
That was an impressive win because I don't care. Anytime you can go up on the road and beat a good team like Kansas State. Kansas State, like them or hate them, they had 2 losses by a combined 9 points. They lost by 2. Against Oklahoma State, which is number 16. They lost by a touchdown. We're leading TCU by 18 points at the half, and they're obviously undefeated. Their 2 losses were to 2 very good teams, and I don't blame you for thinking Kansas State had a chance in beating Oklahoma. I just thought they were emotionally drained, and I thought TCU, for whatever reason, made Joe Huebner look like an all-world quarterback, where I knew he was. I saw the guy play against UTSA. I knew what kind of quarterback he was playing out of his mind against TCU.
That whole team was, though.
But
that's what you get, again, being a top 4 team.
Yeah.
2 or 3 or 4, second, third, or fourth ranked team coming into. You're getting everybody's best shot. Period.
And that's what Coach Patterson said on Wednesday. He said, "We're getting everyone's best shot. There's no way around it. You're just getting everyone's best shot." But Baker Mayfield looked exceptional. Sterling Shepard looked good. Kansas State's defense looked overwhelmed. I mean, Joe Huebner obviously looked overwhelmed. They pulled him for Cody Cook, I believe. What was it? Was it early in the second quarter, or did they pull him after the half? Anyhow, I mean, they basically just shut Kansas State completely down. I want to say at one point Kansas State had only 70-something yards of total offense, and I think they got that in one drive against TCU the other night, or a couple weeks ago. But that was a good win for Oklahoma. And someone had texted me telling me, "Wow, this Kansas State loss is bad for TCU." And I text back and I said, "This is great for TCU because we need in that conference, the Big 12 conference needs another good program besides just Baylor and TCU."
And we thought before the Red River game. We thought that Oklahoma was that team this year. We thought Oklahoma was the team that could be that third team to really elevate the conference this year. And I think they're showing that by and large. But I just think that obviously anything goes in that Texas OU game.
Yeah.
And it's that way. It never fails. That game will surprise you every year. But
if you're a betting man, don't ever
touch that game. But I think Oklahoma's kind of rounding into form. They've got weapons. They've got athletes on defense. But I think everything you said though was right. Kansas State was gassed. They were emotionally spent, and Oklahoma came in with their hair on fire. So it was a bad combination for the Wildcats.
Well, let's talk about another game that we're completely off on. Texas Tech somehow survives a Lake Kansas rally and wins on the road 30-20. And I don't think neither one of us thought this score would even come close to being what it was.
I honestly was thinking you were going to look at like a 58-10 type game, 58-17. I don't know what it is about Kansas, but they're good for one of those games a year, I guess, at home where they give somebody a scare. But
it was a 33-point spread.
It's just hard to understand. You know, I will say this: Texas Tech is hobbled right now. I mean, they're very explosive on offense, but they're banged up. You know, they've got some injuries. Devin Lauderdale's banged up. You know, Mahomes is banged up. I mean, I know TCU fans don't want to hear about Texas Tech being banged up, but that's the fact. Yeah. I mean, they are, and it showed. But yeah, that game should have never been that close. But you know, there's a lot of people saying that TCU should have beat Minnesota more than 23-17. After you see what Minnesota's done the rest of the year.
Oh gosh, yeah, that win's not going to look as good for TCU this year as it did last year.
The good thing is, it was the first game of the year on the road, and a Big Ten opponent,
and the largest crowd, ever for Minnesota football.
And they had practiced all off season for that game, and they thought they had a chance to beat them, and they played TCU very tough, but. Yeah, we're going backwards here.
Texas Tech racked up 500, almost 600 total yards of offense. So it's not like, you know, Kansas just put them on stop, you know, just the whole game. They were able to, you know, go out there, roll up and down the field. They just couldn't put the points on the board, and they lost. Texas Tech lost 2 fumbles, and they had a Mahomes threw an interception, so 3 turnovers will hurt you a little bit, but they gave up almost 500 yards of defense. Again, Texas Tech's defense, as we know, was not very good. And you had a guy for Kansas complete 35 of 50 passes, Ryan Willis.
Throws for 329 yards.
I'll be honest, I didn't even know they had a guy named Ryan Willis on their team.
Well, I think he was one of the athletic trainers last week.
Well, I was thinking they were still going to go with Cozart, but obviously they made a change, and it helped a little bit, but obviously, Kansas is still reeling. I don't foresee a win on their schedule yet, and we can talk about it all the rest of the podcast if we want about, you know, deciphering their schedules. It's just trying to figure out how they can win a game out there.
I don't think there's a way.
You know what? We're joking about this, and they're gonna sneak up on the Frogs in Amon Carter Stadium. Watch
Jeremy
it.
Clark.
Watch it. I'm the prophet.
I can't even talk to you right now. That would be the ultimate.
What I tell you last year in the press box at Baylor when they were winning by 21 and Baylor scored, I said, they're going to lose this game. And you said, shut up.
Hey.
And I told
Jeremy Clark is right a lot, but he doesn't like to tell you about the times he's wrong. He gets a couple every once in a while wrong.
Hey, I'm right at least 20% of the time.
I'd give you 55 or 60.
Yeah, I'm either right or wrong. 50%. We already talked about Baylor and West Virginia, 62-38. Baylor does what they want to do. Corey Coleman and Josh Doxson are the 2 best receivers in college football. I'll go with Josh being the number 1 because he's more of a polished receiver.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. Corey's probably you definitely got him in the speed. Corey's one of the fastest receivers in college football. But the thing West Virginia did, why in the heck would you put single coverage on Corey Coleman? I mean, you're asking to get beat if you put single coverage on them.
I just felt like it didn't matter what West Virginia put out there. They weren't stopping them. I mean, they didn't have a player on their roster that could match up with one of those receivers, and it was very obvious early on.
Seth Russell's having a good year. I mean, he's gone out and had some pretty good games. He has another big game against West Virginia. People are kind of mentioning him as a Heisman contender.
He's kind of a dark horse right now. Well, you know what he does is he brings another element to Baylor's offense that they hadn't seen since they had RG3. I mean, Bryce Petty was a good passing quarterback, but Seth Russell brings that. He's not quite the dynamic runner that RG3 was, but he actually he does run the ball well, and he's got some speed to him.
What did he end up throwing for in that game?
Because I know 376, 5 touchdowns, but he also ran for 160 yards.
I mean, those are Heisman numbers.
Yeah, I mean that's. And he looked at times on some of those runs, like he was the fastest player on the field. Obviously not faster than his own receivers, but there was nobody on West Virginia's team catching him. So he's a big kid. He's got a good arm. He makes good decisions. Not to toot Baylor's horn, but good grief, man. If you watch those guys, it's hard to not be impressed with what they do on the offensive side of the ball.
I think you're looking ahead again. But that's all right. We're going to look ahead to this week in Big 12. We got 4 games on the docket here, and see if you can catch me on these predictions. You're 3 behind me now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll ever
further and further behind.
I don't know if you'll ever catch me.
I'll have to take some chances this week and try to catch up with you.
All right. Let's talk about probably the biggest game out of the whole schedule is Texas, Oklahoma. This could be a scary game for Oklahoma, but I'm going to go with the Sooners because they're playing at home. Texas Tech has one of the worst defenses in college football. Obviously, one of the worst defenses in the Big 12. I think Baker Mayfield has another good game. I think the Sooners get the running game going a little bit more this week. I think Sterling Shepard has a good game. So give me the Sooners at home. I know they're 14.5 point favorite, but I think they beat the spread this week against Tech.
Give me Oklahoma too. As much as I want to see Tech give them a good game, I just don't see any way Tech can stop. You've seen Tech's run defense. You're going to tell me they're going to stop Perine and Mixon and that everybody else that the Sooners run out there, and then the way Mayfield's throwing the ball, I don't see Tech being able to hold OU under 50. And I just don't think Tech can. It's going to be a 52 to 30 type game.
I see the same thing. I can see it being a 52 to 35 type game myself. I think the Sooners win by at least 17 points in this one. Kansas on the road against number 14. I thought they were number 16, but number 14, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State still undefeated, coming off the bye. Bad news for Kansas. Got to go into Stillwater. It's a 33.5 point spread. And, of course, we don't go by the spread. We just go heads up. Oklahoma State's going to still be undefeated.
I agree. I don't really see any way that Kansas has a chance in that game unless Oklahoma State bus gets lost on the way to the stadium. I mean, honestly, that's going to be another ugly game on the schedule for Kansas.
They need to get Dax Garman over there for Kansas.
He needs one more school to transfer
to go to. Kansas State at Texas. Kansas State had a past couple of rough weeks. I mean, they had a chance to play TCU and Oklahoma both at home. Now they got to go on the road at Texas. This is a tough game to call. I want to say Texas can win this game. Obviously, they can win it, but will we see the Texas that played against OU, or will we see the Texas that is 2-4, lost on the road to TCU 50-7? It's very hard for me to decide, but I'm going to call Texas getting that win. I think Kansas State doesn't play as well as they do at home on the road. So and they still got major questions at quarterback. Who can get the job done? They don't have the skill guys on offense, I think, to compete with Texas's defense. Give me the Longhorns. They're going to improve to 3-4.
Well, I was hoping that I might see something on this schedule where I could pick different from you to try to make up some ground, but I don't see it on this one. I think Texas takes this game. They're coming off of that emotional win. It's almost like they kind of banded around Charlie Strong, and they showed a lot of support for him. And it looks like they may have turned a corner. We'll see, obviously, as they play out their schedule, but I think this is going to be a Texas win.
Last game, Iowa State and Baylor. Give me your thoughts.
Again, I'd say Iowa State has about a 3% chance of winning that game, and that might be high.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, I mean, Baylor's they're too much on offense, and I think Iowa State's a hard-nosed team. I mean, they play tough, but they just don't have the guys to score, and they're going to score some points on Baylor. Heck, watch Warren. Warren might run on Baylor a little bit, but it's just not going to be enough. You can't get into a track meet with the Bears, and Iowa State's not equipped for that kind of a game.
If I'm correct, this is the second opponent on Baylor's schedule that they play after that opponent has played TCU the week before. They played Texas Tech a week after they played TCU. Now they're playing Iowa State a week after they've played TCU. Both teams, Texas Tech was emotionally drained. I think Iowa State's going to be emotionally drained from this game. Plus, you're coming down to play at McLean Stadium, and whether you like that stadium or not, it's tough to win there, and they're still undefeated in that stadium. Baylor will remain undefeated. They're going to beat Iowa State, and they'll probably beat the spread. The spread's 37 points, but I think Baylor's going to want to send a message to all the who's better, Baylor or TCU folks out there. There's going to be another chance for them to go out and roll up some points and say, okay, well, TCU just played them the week before. We just beat them 66-10. Who's better?
You just hope that I've seen nothing from the voters that leads me to believe that they can keep a level head, but you hope they don't get swayed by things like that. You can't start doing the comparing scores type thing, but people do it, and so.
If you compared scores, there was no way Oklahoma was going to go up and beat Kansas State the way they did.
Yeah. No way.
Or if you compare scores, you're automatically assuming TCU is going to beat Oklahoma because TCU beat Texas 50-7 and Texas beat Oklahoma. So you can't do that. But unfortunately, there are people that hang their hat on that, whether it be fans or media, whoever you want to say, they get caught up on that. So it is what it is. I will call this upset. Utah will leave the undefeated ranks this week. They play USC. USC is going to beat them.
That's funny you said that. That was going to be. I was looking at all the undefeated teams and who they played this week, and that was one of the games that I actually looked at and thought, this is where Utah trips up. USC got beat by Notre Dame, and they haven't looked like world beaters, but Utah, I don't think they've won a game in USC or at USC, and I forgot what the stat was, some ridiculous number. Now, I realize that has no bearing on this year's game, but I think that USC has enough offense, and they are physical enough on their defense to cause Utah some trouble on offense that I could see the Trojans coming out of that with a win.
And speaking of a big win, how about Justin Fuente? Or Fuentes, as our board-op Purple Pain would like to say.
That was my favorite game of the weekend. I watched that game, and I was pulling for Memphis hard, and I was really excited.
Ooh.
Hey.
Hey.
I was.
Whoa.
I was really excited for Justin, and those guys play so hard for him, and Ole Miss is a good team. But I think, again, it proved that they were never the number 3 team in the country this year.
SEC, man.
But SEC. But, they were never the number 3 team in the country. The fact that they jumped after beating Bama, they jumped 68 spots to tie TCU at number 3. Obviously,
yeah.
I'm exaggerating, but it was ridiculous to go from 14 to 3 or whatever it was. It just shows, man, that there's a lot of unknowns right now in college football. There is more parity than I've ever remember seeing. But Ole Miss is a solid team, but I think Memphis kind of just shot a lot of holes in that. And honestly, I don't think Memphis is a great team. I think they're a good team. I think they actually surprised me that they held Ole Miss to 24 because Memphis's defense has not been good this year.
Yeah.
They've scored a lot of points, but they haven't really held anybody. So that was the biggest crowd I've seen in Memphis in a really long time, and I think they were
a lot of Ole Miss fans there too.
There were a lot of Ole Miss fans. It was like
not a far drive,
about a 70-mile drive or so. But the Memphis fans that were there were loud and they were excited, and it's cool to see Memphis have that kind of atmosphere at a game, and really happy for Justin, and the dollar signs are just adding up right now, man. He's gonna get a big fat pay raise and a nice new job at the end of this year.
Yeah, no matter what, he's getting a pay raise, whether it's at Memphis or at another job. But I don't think he's going to be at Memphis after this year. He's done a miraculous job, remarkable job, however you want to define it. They said you couldn't win in Memphis, and he's just changed that program completely.
10 wins last year in a conference championship.
Yeah,
they're gonna have a chance for another conference championship this year.
In his third year.
Yeah,
his third or fourth year. His third year. His fourth. I can't remember how many years he's been there.
I think it's his fourth year, but either way, I don't see him re-signing with Memphis. I could be wrong. I just don't see that as his destination, final destination. it's not like a Coach Patterson TCU situation. I don't
Yeah.
think.
Memphis, I don't think is going to be moving into a Power 5 conference anytime soon.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you got job openings like South Carolina or USC or schools that are in Power 5 conferences that aren't even open right now that will be open by the end of the year, you're going to see his name taking one of those jobs.
Sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the games from around the country last week, or where do you want to go next?
Well, I guess there's not really a whole lot of games. I mean, A&M and Alabama. I mean, that was Alabama tore it up. I mean, you throw how many pick sixes? I don't even remember.
It was 3 pick sixes, but I think the thing that stood out to me was how Alabama was so physical compared to A&M. Just looked like warm butter. Their defense did. I mean, Derrick Henry was just running right through those guys.
He's a maniac.
He is. He's a big running back, but A&M really lacked on the physical side of that game, and you could see Alabama really took it to him.
Speaking of size, I'm sorry, man. I love Kyler Murray as a high school quarterback. I thought he was the top quarterback in the country.
Sure.
But that kid looked like he was a mini-me out there on the field.
Yeah, he did.
And I'm sorry, he's not 5'11".
No, he's 5.
You know
about
who measured him at the Nike camp, and I won't go any further than that. But
I've stood next to Kyler Murray, and he's 5'9" at best. That's at best. He might be 5'8". So he's got a great arm. He's got good.
Man,
build.
he is. I still say he was the best high school quarterback I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this much. I hope he does great things at A&M, but they struggled a little bit against Alabama, and now Alabama's talking about playoffs and everything else. And I will real quickly before we jump into recruiting. I'll say right now after watching 7 weeks of football, the 4 teams I think that are going to make it are Ohio State, TCU, Alabama.
So you think Alabama beats LSU head up?
Yeah, I do. And number 4 is, I don't know.
I got number 4. And
Who's number 4?
And I actually think they might be kind of underrated right now with Clemson Tigers.
You know what? Clemson is a good pick.
Clemson's playing good. Look, they beat Boston College 34-17 this week, and some of you guys might sneeze at that and say that's no big deal. Boston College has one of the best defenses in the country, and Clemson just took it to them. Clemson's very impressive right now. They're playing well on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to win the ACC, and that could be my 4th playoff.
So you
team.
Agree with me on the other 3?
I do, yeah. That's exactly who I like.
But we need some chaos to happen. We need Michigan to beat Ohio State. I want to see LSU beat Alabama. How cool of a game would it be to see TCU and LSU play? 2 Heisman contenders.
Here's a dark horse that at the beginning of the season, if you would have told
Kentucky.
me, if you would have told me this,
Houston.
I would have told you you're completely insane. But I was looking at their schedule. The freaking Iowa Hawkeyes don't have anybody else on their side.
Yeah.
They have nobody on their side of the schedule. They won't play. They don't play Michigan this year. They don't play Ohio State. It would have to be in the Big Ten championship game, and
Which they will be steamrolled.
And you want to, and I agree with you, but by who?
Whoever wins out of Ohio State and Michigan will steamroll Iowa.
And I agree that they should, but I haven't been impressed with either one of those teams this year. So that's why I'm saying, what if Iowa ended up undefeated? Good grief.
Iowa is the Big Ten version of Oklahoma State.
Okay.
Oklahoma State is a good team. They're not a great team. They're not a playoff team. Iowa is a good team. They're not and I know you're just scatter shooting out there because they are undefeated and their schedule is very, very weak. But I just, can you imagine the Hawkeye fans being pumped up with the chance that, we're all talking about it. Here comes Iowa. They're sitting at number 5 in the playoff picture, and all they need to do is get a win, and they go up.
Another repeat of last year. Ohio State, Wisconsin.
They lose 52-6 or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But well, let's jump into some recruiting real quick before we finish up the show. I made the trip down to San Angelo last Friday. Saw Brennan Wooten play in person for the first time this year. Brennan had a great game, 22 of 33, threw for 306, 3 touchdowns, and ran for a touchdown. I hope you guys had a chance to see the highlights that I was able to shoot from the sidelines in that game. But
You can only take so much from highlights. Those are great shots, by the way. Good grief, he looks like he's in control. He is a smooth operator back there. He looks very calm, and I haven't had a chance to see him play live in person yet myself. Tell me a little bit about him.
I'm gonna give you a comparison, and people are gonna say it's crazy, but the kid reminds me of Colt McCoy. He reminds me of Colt McCoy because he is so calm and collective. He doesn't get rattled. He demands.
He moves in the pocket really well.
His pocket presence is excellent. I mean, he knows he knows when to step up. He knows when to escape, and he's got good mobility. He's not gonna beat you with 4.4 speed, but he's quick enough to avoid a rush. He avoided a rush several times. The guy he was running away from on Midland's defensive end, number 9, that kid's got 10 D1 offers. Traver Vline. He's got a Boise State offer. I mean, the kid's a good defensive end prospect. And Brennan was able to escape away from him, roll outside the pocket, get some yards running the football, or buy some time throwing the football downfield. But I'll tell you this much: I've seen Brennan in person. I've seen Sean Robinson in person right now. And I know that's kind of a debate on which quarterback's better. Obviously, Sean's ranked higher. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. But I was much more impressed with Brennan's play against Midland than I was when I saw Sean play against Ennis. Now, I will say this. Sean doesn't have quite the weapons around him that Brennan does. Brennan's got a good collection of skill position players, starting with his brother, who had 8 catches for, I think, 125 yards, and he had, I think, all of that in the first half. And Aaron right now has an offer from SMU, but tell you right now, if he ever gets one from TCU, he's committing on the spot.
Yeah.
But you know, Brennan did look very good, and like I said, the biggest comparison I can make with him right now, especially the way they looked in high school, is Colt McCoy. I didn't say Case McCoy. I said Colt McCoy. 2 very different players, as we all know.
And I'm going to just say this. I never really had thought about Colt McCoy, but as you were about to say who he reminded you of, I was thinking about the highlights, and that name was about to come to my mind, out of my mouth right when you said it, because the way he was moving in the pocket, throwing on the run, and it reminded me of watching Colt McCoy and his highlights in high school and the way he moved in the pocket effortlessly.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about pocket presence. I mean, there's guys that are great when the play breaks down, they can take off and run, but it takes an even more intelligent quarterback and somebody to even be more brave, I guess, when things are breaking down around you, to just slide up in the pocket instead of take off running, keeping your eyes downfield and completing the pass. And that's what I've seen from Brennan is all hell can break loose around him, and his eyes are downfield. He knows where everybody's at, and he's locked in, and you can just tell he's had a lot of work, and the guys that have worked with him need a lot of kudos. He was impressive.
He was coached by Todd Dodge as a sophomore.
There you go.
So he learned a lot from Coach Dodge, and Coach Dodge has had some pretty good success coaching quarterbacks. But the thing I like about Brennan the most is you get the same facial reaction, the same mannerisms is when he throws a touchdown pass. The same is exact same when he throws an interception. You know you got a good quarterback when you get those two things, and he has the same reaction.
That's important in a leader because your team has to be able to look at you, and you can't be too high or too low. You have to be even keel. You have to be almost stoic to where your guys can look at you and go, okay, he's got this. He's going to lead us to the win, and that's what you see. And those are good qualities to have in a quarterback.
Some other guys that we had a chance to talk to this week, and you're going to have an update. You talked with Mike Williams, 4-star defensive tackle from All Saints, last night. What did Mike have to say?
I don't want to give away too much because I am going to run that story tonight, but I will say TCU's still in it.
By the time we hear it, it'll be in the morning. So
there you go.
Give us the breakdown.
Good point. Mike Williams pretty much he says right now he's 100% to Stanford. I think he's very high on Stanford, obviously, but he says he does want to take all 5 official visits. He's talked with Stanford; they're cool about it, and he appreciates the fact that they want him to go out and take his visits. And he seems to have the utmost respect for that program. He still loves TCU. I think Texas will get a visit. I think TCU will get a visit. There's a couple different schools that he's going to look at, kind of as a I would, like you call it, maybe a fallback plan. And that's not a
Yeah.
negative connotation towards any of these other schools. Heck, it's Stanford. If my kid comes to me tomorrow and says, I want to go to Stanford, first I'm going to say,
He's going to Stanford.
yeah, good luck. I hope you make it. But, yeah, who doesn't want their kid to go to Stanford? That's a great school. So I understand where he's coming from. On the football field, they're doing amazing this year, but just what they are academically, how could you ever, slide a kid for liking what Stanford's doing? But I think TCU has a good shot if some things happen, some certain things happen. I don't know if we want to say what those are exactly, if that's something that's common knowledge yet.
Well, I mean, it's any time. If you're getting into Stanford, you have to go through admissions, and that sometimes is a long process. And for right now, Mike still hasn't heard back on that. It's not like he's not eligible or
Right,
Stanford.
right.
Stanford doesn't just offer a kid without seeing the kid's transcript and everything else. So it's just the admissions process that he has to wait on. And if something does backfire, then he's got to have some options. And I mean, TCU got a pretty good prospect about 4 years ago when his admissions to Stanford got messed up, and that kid's name is Deontay Gray. So
Absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong at all. But Mike would be a great addition to the defensive line. He comes in, fills a need. Obviously, one of the top defensive tackles in the country. And a few months ago, I know it. Blame me. I predicted Mike to go to TCU because I kept hearing some pretty strong things out of All Saints that Mike was, really liking TCU a whole lot, and if anyone in state, it was going to be TCU. But Stanford was kind of always out there. I think even you thought he was going to go to Stanford, but you just kind of hooked on to the TCU wagon like I did. And,
Yeah.
But it'd still be a great addition. And
Make no mistake, Mike loves TCU. He really does. He likes everything about TCU. He likes the coaches. He loves the recruiting class they're putting together.
See, you talked to him last night. Okay, so I was trying to see if I could put two and two together about you saying there's going to be a secret switch late in the process. I didn't know if you were referring to Mike. So
no, and honestly, I wasn't given a specific name.
Okay.
I was going off the fact that if you look at the history of TCU's recruiting, at the end there's always some kid that you absolutely did not expect he comes out of nowhere. And in the past they've been maybe some more under the radar types, and that may still happen. But I just have a feeling that there's going to be a big surprise, especially if TCU closes out the year like we think they can this year. They're going to pull a big name recruit from another team that they've been committed to the whole process, and everybody's going to be shocked. And that's just I'm just playing the statistics there, but I could see that happening for sure.
The good thing with the bye week this weekend is it gives a chance for the coaches to get out to some of these games. They haven't had that chance in the last couple of weeks with them going on the road and being in other towns on Friday nights. But I know this Friday some of the coaches are going to get out and go see some prospects. Obviously, you'll go see some committed players and some other big targets. And we hope to get a more definite list of where those coaches are going to be. But I do think the big man's going to be in Louisville this Friday night to check out Denzel Okafor, and it's about time, for Denzel to feel the love from Coach P, and Coach P has obviously helped recruit it. I mean, I don't want to say he hasn't had any hand in the recruitment, but it's going to show Denzel that, hey, Coach P from TCU's over here to watch me. With him thinking of TCU and Texas right now, that's a huge thing for Coach P to get out there. And that's not 100% certain right now, just coming down through the grapevine. But if you guys are happening to go to Louisville and First Plano East and you want to make a trip over there, you might just see Coach P over there on the sidelines or in the end zone.
Yeah, there'll be some talent on that field too. A 2017 recruit out of Cedar Hill, Cameron Buckley, our own Ryan Bartow posted a little bit about Cameron's affinity for TCU. He's been high on the Frogs for a long time, and he continues to be. He actually named them his leader. TCU's the leader for his services right now, and He's another explosive player coming out of Cedar Hill. They seem to just grow those kids on trees. And the offensive players that have come out of there the last few years are really impressive. And he would be a nice addition to the team. I actually could see him being one of the early 2017 commits for TCU.
4-star receiver getting recruited by Sean Robinson.
Yeah.
That's got to be a plus. Got to be a plus. Well, guys, that's about it for tonight. We hope you guys enjoy the off week like the players do. No one's going to have a heart attack this week, I don't think, watching the Frogs play. But lots of action for other games on the slate. And I guess we'll have to wait a few more days for the TCU football to be on national television.
Yeah,
So
it'll be a good one.
Be a fun game. But until next time, guys, we appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening. I'm Jeremy Clark for Jeremiah Glenn. You guys have a good week.
Thanks a lot, guys.